The wind screamed across the lonely ridges of Montana Territory, carrying snowflakes that cut sharper than any blade. Out there, on that endless white plain, a lone rider moved through the storm, a big man with a thick beard, wrapped in a fur coat, his horse trudging slow through the drifts. His name was Elias Boone, known by folks in the valley as the Mountain Man. He'd lived alone for years, building traps, hunting elk, talking more to wolves than to people. Some said he'd lost his wife to fever. Others said he'd lost his heart to war. Either way, Elias had long since decided the world below the mountain had nothing left for him. That night, though fate had other plans, Elias was halfway to his cabin when he heard it, faint, like a dream. A woman's cry. He pulled his horse to a stop. The storm swallowed every sound, but then, there it was again. "Help, please, help us!" He kicked his horse forward, eyes scanning the white blur. A few yards ahead, he saw a broken wagon half buried in the snow. A single lantern flickered weakly beside it, and near it, a woman in rags, clutching a small bundle in her arms. Her lips were blue, her hair frozen. She was whispering something over and over like a prayer. When Elias dismounted, she fell to her knees in front of him. "Please." "Bury my child," she choked out. "He's gone cold." "I can't go any farther." Elias froze. He looked at the tiny face wrapped in cloth, pale, still. The man who hadn't spoken to a soul in months felt something stir inside him. "Ma'am," he said quietly, voice rough like gravel, "you're not dying out here. Not tonight." Elias lifted both the woman and her child onto his horse. They rode through the storm to his cabin, a small log home perched against the mountain. Inside, the fire roared to life. The woman's hand shook as she laid the child down near the warmth. Elias didn't say a word. He just handed her a blanket, poured water, and waited. She finally spoke through tears. "My name's Clara Mayfield. We were heading west. My husband, he died last spring. I thought I could make it to my sister's ranch in Idaho, but..." Her voice broke. The wagon wheel snapped in the snow. I tried to keep him warm, but she couldn't finish. Elias sat silent for a long while. Then he said softly, "We'll bury him come morning. You'll stay here tonight. You're safe." Dawn came slow over the white hills. The wind had calmed, the world quiet as a prayer. Elias dug the grave himself, hard, frozen ground breaking beneath his shovel. Clara stood nearby, clutching a cross she'd carved from a branch. When the child was laid to rest, Clara whispered, "Thank you." No one else would have stopped. Elias looked up at her, eyes full of something he hadn't felt in years. "Ma'am," he said, "out here, we only survive if we remember we're still human." They stood there a long while, neither speaking, just the wind whistling through the pines. Clara was too weak to travel on. So, day after day, she stayed in Elias's cabin. He hunted and brought back rabbits. She mended his torn shirts. Slowly, the silence between them turned soft. She asked him once, "Why do you live alone up here?" Elias didn't look up from whittling his wood. "Used to have a family. Fever took my wife and boy. Guess I just never found another reason to talk." Clara's eyes filled with sympathy. "Maybe you just hadn't found the right person to listen." He gave her the smallest smile she'd ever seen, and something inside his chest, something frozen for years, began to thaw. Weeks passed. The snow melted off the hills and spring came like a promise. One morning, Clara found Elias sitting by the creek, holding a piece of paper. It was a letter, torn and weathered. He handed it to her. "I wrote this years ago. Never sent it. To my wife." Clara unfolded it carefully. Inside were just a few words. "If heaven's got mountains, I'll find you there." Her hands trembled as she looked up. "She must have loved you deeply." "She did," Elias said. "But I was too late to tell her that enough times." Clara reached over and placed her hand on his. "Then tell someone else now." Elias looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. By the time summer rolled in, Clara had started helping the mountain man with everything, tending to his traps, cooking meals, even laughing at his gruff humor. One evening, as the sun melted behind the peaks, Clara said quietly, "I should go. My sister must think I'm gone." Elias's heart dropped. He'd known it was coming, but hearing it out loud felt like losing something all over again. He nodded. "I can take you partway there. Got a horse strong enough for the trail." That night, neither of them slept. He sat by the fire staring at the embers. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, whispering her son's name. When morning came, she walked to the small grave by the hill one last time. Elias followed silently. She knelt beside the wooden cross. Rest now, my boy. You got a place in heaven. And somehow, I got one left here too. They rode until the mountains gave way to the golden plains. Clara's sister's ranch stood in the distance. She turned to Elias, her eyes wet. You saved me, you know. I thought my heart was buried with him, but you showed me it can still beat. Elias smiled faintly. You gave me a reason to talk again. They stood there a long time, not wanting to say goodbye. Finally, she stepped closer and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. If you ever come down from those mountains, she whispered, you'll find a home waiting. Then she turned her horse and rode away. Dust swirling behind her, Elias stood watching until she vanished. The wind blew through his hair, and for the first time in years, he felt the sun. Seasons turned again. The snow came, then melted. People in the nearby town started talking about a strange man who'd begun showing up at the market every few weeks. Quiet, polite with kind eyes. They said he always bought flour, fabric and wildflowers. No one knew he left the flowers at a small grave behind his cabin, or that one day he left a second set at the edge of Clara's sister's ranch. Because one morning, he'd found her waiting there, smiling. I told you, she said softly. You'd find a home here, he laughed quietly. Guess you were right, ma'am. And for the first time in a long while, Elias Boone, the mountain man, came down from the mountains for good. Years later, townsfolk told stories about them. How a widow and a hermit built a new life out of grief. How the wildest heart in the West learned to love again. They said every spring, when the first snow melted, Elias would sit by that grave on the hill, whispering, Thank you, little one. You brought your mama home to me. And Clara would join him, holding his hand, both of them silent, not in sorrow, but in peace. Because sometimes the greatest acts of kindness are born from the deepest wounds. And sometimes one broken soul saves another, just by refusing to walk away. If this story touched your heart, remember, kindness doesn't need grand gestures or riches. Sometimes it's just staying when everyone else walks away. Thank you for watching Kindness Stories. If you believe love can bloom even in the coldest mountains, like, comment, and subscribe for more true-hearted tales that remind us humanity still shines brightest in the darkest places.